Hey friends, it's late or maybe early, depending on where you are. What time is it where you're listening? And where in the world are you right now? Go ahead and dim the lights. Pull the covers up to your chin. Let the sound of the fan fill the quiet corners. You're safe here. Tonight, we're slipping slowly into the creaking corridors of the past, into the scratchy linens, the unwashed wigs, and the musty velvet of royal rooms. We're not looking for glory, just the grime, the rot, the bits of truth. History left out because it smelled too bad to remember. It's not the war victories or grand palaces we'll explore, but the crust beneath the crown. And we begin in a room where the queen refuses to bathe. Story 1. The queen who refused water. Inside Elizabeth eyes royal cleanliness. The door creaks open slowly. You are standing in the private chambers of Queen Elizabeth I. It is the year 1586. The heavy tapestries smell of dust and smoke. The rushes on the floor are fresh, layered with dried lavender and crushed rosemary. Not because she enjoys the scent, but because the queen has not bathed in months. Her ladies-in-waiting know the ritual. A dab of rose water behind the ears. Powder down the bodice. A stiff linen ruff pulled up to the chin, hiding whatever lies beneath. The Queen of England smells like cloves, sweat, and anxiety. Bathing, you see, was considered a risk. In Elizabethan medicine, the body was understood through humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. These fluids, they believed, governed everything. The skin, that thin protective veil, was sacred. If you opened your pores, say, with warm water, you invited disease in. Elizabeth agreed. I will take a bath once a month, whether I need it or not, she reportedly said. But even that was generous by Tudor standards. Water, to her, wasn't cleansing. It was dangerous. Instead, she practiced the ritual of dry hygiene, process involving scented cloths, rubbing with linen, and the frequent changing of undergarments. Under her gowns were layers of linen shifts, one each morning, one each evening. These she changed religiously, because the linen, not soap, did the cleansing. The cloth absorbed sweat, oils, and dirt. Washing the linen, not the body, was considered the hygienic act. You can imagine the laundry. And yet, this wasn't laziness or filth. It was the science of the time. Doctors warned that warm water weakened the body. The queen, who could never afford weakness, took this to heart. When she did bathe on rare, orchestrated occasions, a wooden tub was rolled into her chambers. A contraption covered in velvet, filled with scented herbs. Heated bricks warmed the bottom. Water was poured in by servants and left to cool as her privacy remained guarded. Bathing was not refreshing. It was ceremonial, boring, complicated, dangerous. But the queen was immaculate in her own way. Her teeth, though blackened with sugar, were polished. Her hands, always gloved, were powdered. Her face painted white with ceruse. A deadly mix of vinegar and lead was both armor and illusion. The paint cracked with every smile, but few ever saw her bare skin. To be clean was to be seen, and she preferred to remain a mystery. Outside her private rooms, the world was changing. Sewers overflowed. Fleas infested beds. Bubonic plague came in waves, yet Elizabeth remained untouched. A still figure in a court that stank of sweat, garlic, and old wigs, she believed cleanliness was next to godliness, but not in the way we do now. It wasn't about soap or scrubbing. It was about control, self-discipline, regal silence. Even her death mask, years later, bore the traces of powder caked into pores. But behind the scented oils and stiff collars, a question lingered quietly. In the rushes beneath her feet, if cleanliness is control, what was Elizabeth afraid of letting in? There is a ritual that begins each morning before Elizabeth I even opens her eyes. The gentle creak of floorboards, the shuffle of slippered feet her ladies are already at work. Before sunrise, they prepare the linens. Not just gowns or gloves, but the undershift stiff with starch, sometimes crusted from the day before, and always white, always whole. Because to be queen was to appear eternal. This is not the romantic vision of royal dressing rooms. It is colder than you imagine, more tedious. It begins not with perfume, but with vinegar. Vinegar was thought to purify the air. Servants soaked cloth in it, wiping down every surface she might touch. The wooden combs, the armrests of her throne, the handles of her traveling cases. They called it aromatic defense, because nothing terrified the Tudor court more than invisible corruption. Bad smells weren't just unpleasant. They were warnings of rot in the air. And rot meant illness or death. Elizabeth's court was obsessed with prevention. Baths might weaken the skin, but scent could still protect the soul. So her rooms were filled with Pomander's tiny metal orbs, packed with musk, ambergris, myrrh, or orange peel hung. On chains, stuffed into gloves, and clutched in anxious hands. The queen herself favored gloves scented with civet and oily secretion from the jaw, glands of a wild cat. It was musky, strong, and clung to her like an invisible veil. To be near her was to smell luxury ... then wildness. A strange animal mixture of sweetness and rot. Perfume was her armor. Her ladies helped her into it. Each shift took time. Beneath, her gowns were corsets, farthingales, and petticoats. The lacing was tight, not just for shape, but for posture, discipline, presentation. The body was molded into authority, and the linen shifts closest to the skin served as her shield. Cleaned often, replaced frequently, because when you don't bathe, linen becomes your skin's only sponge. Washing those garments was its own ordeal. The laundering process was long and reserved for the trusted few. The queen's personal linen was boiled in lyewood ash and water, then rinsed repeatedly, laid flat on fields to bleach in the sun, and scented with herbs before returning to the royal quarters. A simple chemise might take a week to clean, so she needed many, but the most dangerous ritual was her face. Each morning, Elizabeth painted herself into power. Her trademark mask of youth required a mixture known as Venetian Cirrus white lead and vinegar. It created a ghostly, flawless surface that blurred wrinkles, scars, and time. But it also burned, slowly. Her skin blistered beneath the daily application. And to soothe those wounds, she applied more. The cycle never ended. In private, her ladies saw the damage, raw patches, flaking skin, infections hidden beneath layers of white, but no one spoke of it. To be queen was not to heal, it was to perform. Elizabeth inherited more than a crown. She inherited the memory of her mother's beheading, her father's tyranny, and the deep suspicion of women in power. Her cleanliness, her perfection, was her defense. Her refusal to show weakness made her seem untouchable, even divine. But behind the curtain, the cost was high. To maintain this illusion, the queen rarely ate in public. When she did, she picked carefully morsels soaked in honey or preserved fruits. Her teeth, blackened by sugar and possibly infection, were kept hidden. Reports from foreign ambassadors noted the stench when she spoke too closely. Her breath, they said, betrayed the truth her face denied. Still, none dared offend her. A French envoy once offered her a hand mirror as a gift. She refused it outright, not out of vanity, but because she could not afford to be seen through anyone else's reflection. Her image powdered, perfumed, perfect, was not to be challenged. Not even by glass. She had portraits painted in strict rules of idealization. Artists were forbidden to depict her aging. Even when she was 60, Her image showed smooth skin, red lips, and alert eyes. This deception extended to her royal court. Ladies-in-waiting followed similar routines. Painted faces, scented gloves, clean linen. But many of them were suffering itching from lice, rash from lead, dizzy from tight corsets. A court of ghosts, walking beneath velvet gowns. And then there were the wigs. Elizabeth's real hair, once famously red, began thinning in her 30s. Perhaps from stress. Perhaps from mercury used to treat smallpox scars. Perhaps from age. But by the time she was 40, she had dozens of wigs, each redder than the last, kept powdered, curled, and styled to perfection. Beneath them, her scalp was likely blistered and sore. The heat, the sweat, the lack of washing, it left little room for comfort. But the Queen wore them daily. She had to. After all, a monarch could not be seen aging. Not when threats came from every side. Not when enemies whispered about heirs and legitimacy and weakness. So she endured the pain of hygiene by performance. Because to smell sweet was not just cosmetic. It was political. It was survival. And yet, beneath all that artifice, beneath the heavy skirts and lead paint and burning scalp, did Elizabeth ever long to wash it all away? The Queen has died. It is March 24th, 1603. Elizabeth I lies in her bed in Richmond Palace. The chamber is dim. The air is still. No one dares to touch her body yet. She had refused to allow a physician near her for days. She had refused to lie down. Even at the end, she would not let herself appear weak. For hours, no. For days she stood, supported by cushions and trembling limbs. Refusing food, refusing comfort. They say she knew that her silence meant she had accepted it. But even now, long after her final breath, her skin is powdered, her lips tinted. The paint cracks, but the mask remains. Death was not allowed to look. Unseemly. But soon, the court begins to murmur. There are procedures. There is a body to preserve. And beneath the layers of linen, brocade, lead, and perfume, there is decay. Elizabeth's refusal to bathe was not eccentricity. It was the logic of her time. But now, as attendants prepare her corpse, that logic dissolves in silence. They strip away her gowns. What they find beneath is not recorded in court letters. But we can imagine. Skin raw from constant abrasion. Open sores where paint met flesh for too long. The fragile paper of a body held together by pride. They say her body smelled. Sweet even after death. But sweet in this time meant something else. It meant floral oils, civet, musk, rose water layered upon decay. The sickly sweetness of an overripe plum. The way death can hide beneath beauty until you get too close. And yet, no one turned away. She was still the Virgin Queen, glorious. Gloriana, the woman who outlived all her enemies. Her funeral, like her reign, was a performance. As her body was carried through the streets of London, mourners lined the roads in silence. Not because they feared her, but because they had never known another ruler. For 44 years, she had been England itself. She had outlasted assassination attempts, rebellions, excommunications. And she had done it all with a carefully constructed image crafted more like a cathedral than a human life. Foundations of myth, arches of silence, towers of ceremonial powder. But what happens to an empire built on illusion once the paint chips? In the years that followed, her personal belongings were catalogued, sealed, redistributed. Her gowns passed to other noble women, her wigs locked in trunks, her cosmetics studied, especially the ceruse. Doctors began noting its toxicity. The lead, they said, could cause tremors, insomnia, even madness. No one said so aloud, but some wondered. Had the Queen's temperament in her later years, the paranoia, the moods, the long silences, been worsened by her own paint? Even in death, she was trapped in contradiction. They embalmed her with spices and gums, sealed her in lead, buried her beneath Westminster Abbey. And beside her tomb, centuries later, the air still carries the scent of iron and incense, stillness, and dust. But the question lingers. Was Elizabeth I truly clean? Not by modern standards, but by her own measure, yes. She had defended her body from external chaos. She had kept control. Her cleanliness was the ability to separate herself from the mess of mortal life. Yet behind every royal decree, every speech, every shimmering portrait, was a woman in constant discomfort. A woman hiding illness, age, fear. A woman who wore civet to mask infection, who bled into her linen shifts and never let anyone see her natural face. Her hygiene was not about health. It was about hiding Dot, and perhaps that is the true horror, not her refusal to bathe, but the pressure to remain untouchable. How many others were forced to live behind masks? How many queens, mothers, maids lived with pain because dignity demanded it? And what do we still powder over today? We'll leave her now, beneath the marble and the myths, powdered, preserved, forgotten only in the ways that matter. But somewhere, in the cracks of her death mask, and the folds of a sweat-stained shift, a quiet truth lingers. That cleanliness was never just about soap or skin, Dot. It was about the unbearable labor of looking like you didn't suffer. Story 2. The bathhouse boy of Pompeii, scrubbing backs before the volcano. It's morning in Pompeii. The year is 78 AD. The streets are already humming. The clack of sandals on stone, the murmur of women at the well, the occasional shout from a fruit vendor, Dot. And you're not here to shop or pray. You're a bathhouse assistant. A boy with a wooden bucket, calloused hands, and a head full of steam. You wake on a straw mat, bones sore from sleeping on the hard floor of the apodicerium, the changing room. The scent of yesterday's sweat and sulfur still clings to your tunic. You've been here since before sunrise, lighting fires beneath the hypocaust, the underfloor heating system of the baths, Dot. It's your job to feed the furnace, a mix of pine logs and animal dung. You shovel it constantly, keeping the cauldron hot. Rooms steamy enough to fog every bronze mirror, Dot. No one thanks you. No one sees you. They only see the water. The men will arrive soon. First, the older ones, stiff from sleep, creaking from arthritis. Then the younger ones, loud and oiled, smelling of garlic and cheap perfume. Senators, bakers, retired centurions. Even gladiators sometimes come here battered and brooding, bruised from last night's games. They pay a few asses a small coin for a few hours of luxury. You, of course, never enter the pool. You're the unseen laborer, slipping through clouds of steam, carrying buckets, scraping sweat from benches, scooping used olive oil off the tile floors. Because Roman cleaning wasn't soap, it was oil. Patrons would rub themselves in perfumed oil, then scrape it off with a curved metal blade, called a strigil. And you'd collect the runoff. Sometimes you sell that oil to apothecaries. It's full of skin, dirt, and minerals. But people believe it has healing properties. It doesn't, Dot, at least. Not for you. The marble walls are sweating now. You check. The bronze valves. One leaks. You don't have time to fix it. Instead, you mop around it, dodging another scalded toe. Dot, the tepidarium. The warm room is already filling with voices. Gossip, debates about grain prices. A snide joke about the emperor. You don't repeat it. That would be dangerous. Pompeii may seem relaxed, but it watches. Every wall has ears. Graffiti is everywhere, written in charcoal, scratched in plaster. You've seen your own name once, or twice. Crude jokes, cruder drawings. You wipe them away when no one's looking. You can't afford to be remembered. Outside, the day is bright, cloudless. Vesuvius looms in the distance, its outline strangely quiet. No smoke today. The mountain has been asleep for as long as you've been alive. But sometimes you feel a faint tremor underfoot. Just a twitch, like the world clearing its throat. You ignore it. Back inside, you help an elderly man out of the frigidarium, the cold plunge. He curses you for being slow. His ring falls into the water. You fish it out. No thanks. The slave hierarchy in Pompeii is complicated. You're not a house servant with silver to polish or letters to write. You're not chained in a quarry either, but you are owned. The bathhouse master bought you 2 years ago. You were 13, small for your age, but fast, clean, obedient. Now you're nearly 15. Your hands are strong, your lungs used to the heat, and your dreams, if they ever existed, have shriveled under the hiss of boiling water. Still, you know things. You hear every conversation, every deal, every flirtation. You see what men do when they think no one is watching. You learn which merchant cheats his waits, which senator's son visits other men's wives, which general winces when he stands old wound reopened. Information is your only power. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you trade it. Quietly, carefully, a name here, a secret there. Enough to earn a crust of better bread or protection from a rival servant. But mostly, you scrub. Today, the magistrate's wife arrives with her entourage. She shouldn't be here. The men's hours haven't ended yet. But she walks in anyway, draped in gold, smelling of figs and pride. The men clear out. Quickly. She points at the marble bench. You rush to wipe it clean. She sits, tossing her sandals aside. Her maid pours scented oil into her hands. She glances at you once. You bow. Not too deeply. She won't remember your face. No one does. Except maybe the boy with the injured foot. He watches you from the shadows. He slipped last. Weak in the caldarium. You helped him up. Gave him a fig you'd saved in your tunic. He never thanked you. But he remembers. He's here again today. Limping, sitting where you once sat briefly when no one was looking. The bench is still warm. The heat builds. Your tunic sticks to your ribs. You haven't drunk water since dawn. But you must wait until all the patrons leave before touching the cistern. And then, as you refill the oil jars, you feel it again. The floor trembles. Just for a moment. No one else notices. Or pretends not to. The marble lion's head beside the drain gurgles strangely. A bubble of air rises. You glance toward the furnace. The flames flicker sideways. You steady yourself on the wall. It passes. You go back to work. Because even in the shadow of a sleeping volcano, someone still has to clean the BATHW ATER. And if the mountain ever truly wakes, who will notice a missing servant boy in the steam? By mid-afternoon, the baths are finally quiet. The last of the senators is gone, trailing behind a bored servant carrying his sandals. The guards have moved to the street outside. The magistrate's wife has disappeared in a haze of perfume and murmured insults. And you're left behind once again. There's still heat in the marble walls. Steam hangs low. You know better than to relax. The bathhouse is never truly empty, just briefly asleep. You begin the daily ritual of cleaning. First, the tepidarium. The warm room is easiest. Its floors are coated with a thin layer of oil and sweat, the residue of lounging bodies. You take a stiff bristled brush, dip it into vinegar, and scrub until the scent of rot lifts slightly. Next is the strigil bin. You pour out what's left: curdled oil, hair, dead skin, slivers of bronze. The mix runs across the floor like syrup. You collect what you can. Apothecaries will buy it in bulk. One small flask of used oil can be sold as a cure for rashes, aching joints, or bad luck. You've tried it yourself. It doesn't work. Still, money is money. In the caldorium, the hot room, the real work begins. The furnace beneath still glows orange. The floor is hot enough to burn. You wrap cloth around your sandals. Inside, the benches are slick. The air smells of copper, urine, and rosemary. You scrub with both arms, sweat pouring into your eyes. You cough once. Then again, it's nothing, you tell yourself. Outside, the sun hangs low. Shadows stretch across the walls. A dog howls from somewhere near the forum. The sound echoes strangely. Your master enters the room, holding a jug of wine and a rolled-up scroll. He barely glances at you. There's a wedding feast next door. He says, "Clean faster. We'll have guests tonight." You nod. No, thank you. No acknowledgement. You are expected to become invisible in motion. A pair of hands with no voice. Still, you glance at the scroll in his hand. It bears a red wax seal official. Maybe a summons? A notice? You'll never know. You think of the boy with the limp again. He hadn't come back today. You wonder if he's sick, or sold, or run away. You've thought about that before running. But where would you go? You're branded, tracked, and even if you made it to the hills, what then? No money, no Roman name. Just another lost shadow. So you return to the mop. But as the brush hits the stone again, something changes. A sound. A low groan like a door creaking, but longer. Deeper. You freeze. Another tremor. This one longer. It ripples through the floor. A pool sloshes. The oil jar wobbles on the ledge and crashes to the tile, splitting like a ripe melon. Oil spreads. You step back just in time. The master curses. You look at him. He looks at the furnace. A crack appears in the stone, thin and fast, snaking between the tiles. And silence. You don't speak. You don't ask. You both pretend it didn't happen, because to acknowledge fear is worse than fear itself. The Romans have always told themselves they control nature. Roads, aqueducts, bathhouses, temples. They built order from chaos. They tamed the gods. Or so they thought. You return to work. But your hands shake. The master disappears again. The sun begins to set. You are alone in the caldorium, listening to the crackling coals in your own heartbeat. Then dash, just as you're scrubbing the lion head drain you. Notice the water. It's different. Warmer than it should be. Bubbles rising without cause. You dip your fingers in. Smell them. Sulfur. You stand. Slowly. From the window, you see a column of birds rise suddenly. All at once. As if startled by something invisible. Then dusk darkens. A little too quickly. You step outside, onto the bathhouse roof. And there it is. Vesuvius. You've never seen it like this. A thin, gray ribbon of smoke, just now drifting upward, perfectly straight, like a signal from a distant hand. Silent, almost delicate. But your stomach turns. You hear shouting from the forum. Not panic yet. Just confusion. Still, you go back down. You know what to do. Fill the cisterns. Empty the buckets. Store the linen in dry chambers. You've learned that when something goes wrong, you keep working until someone tells you to stop, but no one comes. Past the empty lockers of the appetitorium, you fold towels. You light the oil lamps. And all the while, that thin plume of ash rises higher into the painted sky. The guests never arrive. The master doesn't. Return. Night falls. You sleep beside the furnace. DREAML, says. And in the darkness, ash begins to fall soft as flour, quiet. As breath. No one in Pompeii knows what's coming. But in the bathhouse, beneath marble and steam, you are already choking on the silence. You wake to a gray light. Not morning light, something denser. softer. It's drifting down through the open. Window like fog, but heavier. When you blink, you taste it. Chalk, bitter and dry. You rub your eyes and see smears of soot on your fingers. The floor is coated in a pale dust dot at first. You think it's just ash from the furnace, maybe blown in. But when you step outside the furnace chamber, you hear it soft, steady, like snowfall, but from the sky. Ash, still falling. The bathhouse is silent. No laughter, no splashing, no thud of footsteps. You call out once, softly. No answer. You cross into the tepidarium. The pools are still. The marble glows faintly under the ash-coated skylight. Someone's sandal is still by the edge. Abandoned. Outside, the street is muffled. Like a dream. You slide open the wooden door and step out. Pompeii is disappearing. The roads are already ankle-deep in ash. Roofs sag beneath the weight. Chickens lie motionless in their coops. The air is thick, gray, and vibrating with something low something. Beneath hearing, you look to Vesuvius. The mountain is no longer silent. A black column now rises from its peak twisting, rolling, towering. It reaches miles into the sky and bends and spreads like a canopy over the city. Thunder cracks inside it without lightning. The ground rumbles again. This time, things fall. Tiles slip from rooftops. A statue crashes in the forum. A dog bolts. Down the alley, dragging its leash. You run back inside the BHHOUSE. You don't know what else to do. Back into the coldarium. It's hot. The coals still burn. The air is thick and cloying. You shut the bronze doors. Pull towels across the cracks. You've heard people say underground places are safest during quakes. But you are not underground. You are in a temple of water, heat, and empty rituals. You sit on the stone bench, hugging your knees, watching dust float down like feathers. You think of strange things. The senator who always scratched his thigh. The woman who used lavender oil and whispered to herself in Greek. The boy with the limp who never thanked you but left you half a fig once on the bench. All of them, somewhere. Out there now, buried, running. The bathhouse groans. The walls crack. A torch falls. You grab it instinct and pull open the back grate near the furnace. You remember, once, the master boasted it connected to the drainage tunnels. Useless for the rich. But you are not rich. You are 15. You are covered in oil, soot, and fear. You slip into the tunnel. It is dark, narrow. You crawl. Above you, the bathhouse is breathing its last breaths. You hear a thundering crash, maybe a roof, maybe a wall. Then more silence. You crawl. The tunnel slopes downward. Water drips. Your knees bleed. Your teeth grind ash. Then you see light. A crack. A grate. The street. You push it aside and emerge near the fish market. No one is there. Carts overturned. Piles of ash like snowbanks. Statues faceless. You run. To nowhere. Just away, toward the edge of the city. Toward the orchard near the road to Herculaneum. You don't stop until your lungs scream. You don't look back. And then you do. And what you see will never leave you. The cloud from Vesuvius has grown black at the center, pulsing with fire. Lightning inside it. Screaming wind. The mountain splits again, this time not smoke, but stone. A wave of gas, ash, and flame rolls down its side fast. Too fast. It swallows trees, houses, streets. The BATHOUSE. Gone. Buried. You fall to your knees. Not in prayer. In disbelief. Because the place where you scrubbed strangers' backs, where you boiled water and swallowed shame, where you lived unseen, it is gone. In silence. No farewell. Pompeii is not dying. It is already dead. You are one of the few who escaped. You never return. Years pass. You change your name. You tell no one you were once a bathhouse boy. You marry. Or maybe you don't, but you live. And many years later, you hear a rumor. A town found, buried under ash, statues preserved, bread still in ovens, skeletons curled in final sleep, a room with strigils still on the shelf, abathhouse.intact.u. Do not go. But you know that somewhere under 20 feet of volcanic rock is a lion-headed drain that still smells faintly of oil and sweat. A bench still warm with memory. And maybe, just maybe, someone will find your fig, not the fruit, but the act. The gesture, that you too once lived. That behind every polished Roman bath, there was a boy kneeling in the steam-scrubbing max, and swallowing the weight of the empire. Not every death in Pompeii was glorious. Some were just quiet. Like falling ash between folded towels. Story 3. The monk who cleaned toilets at Cluny Abbey. You wake before dawn. Not because you want to, but because the bells leave no room for sleeping in. It is the year 1128, and you are a lay brother at Cluny Abbey in Burgundy, the largest monastery in all of Christendom, a towering marvel of carved stone, flickering candlelight, and chants that echo like thunder through cloisters. But you don't live among the gilded. Manuscripts are sit in the SCRIPTORIUM. You clean the latrines. Cell is cold. Damp air clings to your blanket. It smells faintly of mold, sheep grease, and wet wood. You swing your feet to the floor. Touch stone. Say nothing. Silence is the rule. Words are for prayer, not comfort. You pull on your robe, rough, woolen, thing patched at the elbows, and feel the familiar weight of the wooden cross around your neck. The bell tolls again. Lauds. Morning prayer. You shuffle to the chapel with the others. Over 100 monks kneel together, but only a few of them are like you. Most are choir monks, educated, literate, trained in Latin psalms. They spend their days copying books, tending relics, or studying theology. You are a conversus lay brother. You didn't take full vows. You weren't trained to read. You came from peasant stock, maybe a farmer's son, or a runaway from famine. The church took you in, gave you food and shelter, and in return, you work. Silently. Mostly alone. Your tasks begin in the necessarium, the communal latrine, a long stone room that stretches over a running stream. It's considered a marvel of engineering. 40 monks can relieve themselves at once. Running water carries waste out of the abbey. But water doesn't carry everything. It pools in strange corners. Leaves slime on stone. Freezes in winter. Reeks in summer. You are assigned to clean it daily. First, you check for clogs. Your tools: a wooden rake, a bucket, and a ragged cloth. Then you scrape. Sludge, hay, bits of robe, occasional rodents. You toss the mess into a side channel and scrub with vinegar-soaked brushes. You have learned not to gag, not because it isn't foul, but because there is no dignity in vomiting where the abbot might walk. And dignity, however minimal, is all you have left. Sometimes, while you work, you hum, quietly, wordless. It's not prayer exactly, just rhythm. It keeps your hands moving. It keeps your thoughts from wandering to the past or to the future. No. One thanks you for this job. The choir monks nod if they pass you in the cloister garden. The cellarer once handed you an extra piece of bread wordlessly, but most of the abbey forgets you exist. You are part of the building, a gear in the great wheel of holy routine. After the latrines, you sweep the cloisters, then carry buckets. To the infirmary, you haul soap made from animal fat and lie to the laundry stones by the stream. You wash feet on Thursdays. You refill candles. You trim lamp wicks. You are a monk by labor, not by mind, but you have your own pride. You know, which torch flickers too fast, which window always leaks. You can patch a thatch roof in darkness. You know where the mice hide, and which herbs mask the scent of mildew. No scholar in the library can do what you do. Still, you envy them sometimes. When you pass the scriptorium, you glimpse the choir monks hunched over calfskin parchment, illuminating pages with gold leaf. Their hands never touch dough. Their robes don't crust at the hem. They sing, they read, they think. You try not to think, because if you do, you remember. You remember the village you left behind, the fire, the hunger, the sickness that took your mother. You remember the frostbite that never quite healed in your toes. You remember your name, but you're not that person anymore. You are Brother Martinus now, or just the cleaner. Depending on who's speaking, the sun rises higher. You break your fast with crusty bread and warm beer. No meat except on feast days. You sit alone near the kitchen door. Another lay brother joins you. Doesn't speak. That's fine. You finish your meal. Return to work. And when the day ends after vespers, after supper, after you've relit the latrine torches for the night, you lie down in your cell once more. Your robe still smells, faintly of vinegar and decay. You close your eyes, and just before sleep takes you, you wonder something. If no one ever sees the dirt you remove, does anyone believe it was ever there? And next morning begins the same. You wake the bells. You kneel in the chapel. You murmur the same psalm you've said so many times your lips form the words by instinct alone. But today, something feels heavier. Maybe it's the cold. A thick fog has settled across the abbey, curling against the arched windows and muffling the bird song. Or maybe it's just the scent in the air richer than usual. Rotting hay, wet wool, a hint of burning tallow. Today is the feast of Saint Benedict, which means more guests, clergy from nearby priories, a bishop or two, perhaps even a visiting noble, escorted through the cloisters with whispered reverence. And that means everything must shine, even the latrines, especially the latrines. After lauds, the sub-prior stops you in the corridor. Doesn't speak, he simply places a small vial of oil into your palm and nods toward an ECESSA RIUM. You understand. They want the air mass. Back at the latrines, you begin the ceremonial cleansing. It's more for appearance than function. You sweep the floor, scrub the wooden seats, polish the iron hinges on the doors that separate each stall. Then you pour the oil rosemary and juniper into shallow ceramic bowls and place them near the water flow. The smell helps. Barely. You think about how much work goes into making something appear effortless. The guests today will pass through, perhaps remarking on the clever engineering of the running water, and never think of you. Never imagine that someone was here, kneeling on whetstone, clearing filth so that they could relieve themselves in dignity. That's the whole point. You suppose, if you've done your job well, you remain invisible. Still, it wears on the soul. After cleaning, you join the others in the kitchen yard, breaking ice from the water barrel. The cook is cursing at a broken ladle. You offer to repair it. It's something your father taught you, how to mend wood with twine and heat. You sit by the brazier, holding the ladle in your hands. As it warms, so does something inside you. Not pride. Not exactly. Just memory. Your hands know things. Things older than this abbey, older than Latin. Your hands remember fire pits and laughter. They remember dirt under fingernails, the weight of a child's head on your shoulder. You shake the thoughts away. You are Brother Martinus. You clean. But later that afternoon, something odd happens. You're summoned by the sacristan, a thin man who rarely speaks to lay brothers. He needs help lifting a cracked marble basin from the cloister fountain. The bishop's arrival is imminent. and the fountain must not leak. You follow him, kneel beside him, lift carefully, and as you do, your sleeve catches on the edge of the basin. It tears. A small piece of your robe flaps down, revealing something underneath bare skin, yes, but also a scar. Long and pale, just below your shoulder. From before the sacristan sees it, says nothing. But his eyes linger. You don't explain. He doesn't ask the basin is replaced. Water begins to flow again. You dip your fingers in, instinctively washing. Away stone dust and regret. Back at the latrines, the sun is slanting low through the narrow window slits. The rosemary oil has faded. The stream beneath gurgles more loudly than usual. You kneel one more time, this time not to clean, but to adjust the candles along the wall. And that's when you hear it, voices, two choir monks, just outside. Not whispering. They don't know you're inside. His robe was torn. Did you see it? A scar, like a burn. Could have been from the plague. Or worse, you think he was a criminal? Or a soldier? Lay brothers come from everywhere. Who knows what he did before? Their footsteps fade. You sit frozen, the wick still between your fingers. You thought the past was buried. And here, in Cluny, among stone and silence, you had become something new. A cleaner of sacred places. A humble servant of God. But the past stains everything eventually, even robes. That night, as the feast ends and the last candle flickers out in the abbey, you lie awake. You think about the scar, the village, the child who didn't make it through the winter, the soldiers who came after, the fire, the noise, the silence. You remember running. You remember kneeling for the first time not to pray, but to hide. The abbot never asked questions, just took you in, shaved your head, and gave you a name that wasn't yours. You've scrubbed stone and filth for 6 years. You've said the same prayers. So many times you sometimes forget they were never yours to begin with. But tonight, you ask a question in the dark. If your hands build holiness, does it matter what they built before? The next morning, a frost has settled over the cloister garden. The stones gleam silver in the early light, brittle with cold. You are already awake, your robe still damp from yesterday's scrub work. No one speaks of the overheard conversation. The monks pass you the same way they always do, some with nods, some without. But you feel it now. A thin shift in the air, as if your silence has become too quiet. You go about your duties. Sweep the cloisters. Refill candles. Collect kindling from the woodshed. But when you return to the latrines, the sacristan is already there, waiting. He doesn't order you away. Doesn't ask questions. Instead, he hands you a bucket of fresh lime powder. The bishop was pleased, he says, not quite meeting your eyes. They noticed the scent. You nod. It's not praise, exactly. But it isn't contempt either. He lingers a moment longer. You've done your work well. Then, he's gone. You scatter the lime in silence. The chalky powder coats the floor, sinks into cracks, and stings your nose. It helps with the smell. It helps with everything. Later that day, you're summoned again, not by the sacristan, but by the infirmarian. He needs help changing the bedding of a dying monk, an elder who once taught psalm tones to novices. Now he cannot rise. His breath rasps. His eyes are milk white with fever. You carry water, wash his legs, wring the cloth. The bed reeks of sickness. The old monk shivers violently, even beneath woolen blankets. You are not trained in medicine, but you are practiced in care. The infirmarian notices. This is good, he murmurs. You've done this before. You don't answer. You finish washing. The old man's feet. You dry them. You place a sprig of lavender beneath his pillow, more for yourself than for him. When you leave, the infirmarian calls after you. Brother Martinus, You turn. There's holiness in hands, he says. Even when they're dirty. You carry that sentence with you like a second cross. That evening, the bell for Compline rings, low and long. You kneel in the back of the chapel, as always. The others chant. You murmur. The voices rise like steam in the winter dark nave. The candles flicker, and you realize something. You are not invisible. You have simply been seen by the wrong light. You thought silence was erasure, that your labor buried you. But here your scraped knuckles, your broken shoes, your quiet hands are part of the prayer. You clean what others fear to touch. You tend to what others pretend isn't there. You scrape rot from stone. You pour rosemary into bowls. You carry buckets through frost and shadow so that others can live in illusion. And maybe that's what holiness really is. Not glowing robes or golden books, but the sound of a rag wrung out in the dark, the sting of vinegar on open skin, the dignity of someone who knows where the filth goes and where it doesn't belong. One night, long from now, your name will not be carved in stone. No one will write your sermons, but someone somewhere will pass through a clean corridor and not think about who scrubbed it. And that, too, will be a prayer. And centuries from now, when the grand towers of Cluny have crumbled and the mosaics have faded, someone may dig into the earth and find a broken broom handle, a clay lamp with soot still on the rim, a wooden cross worn smooth by sweat and time dot, and maybe they'll ask, who lit this lamp? Who carried this bucket? Who made the holy places clean? And, though your name may be lost, the answer will remain. A brother, a servant, a man who knelt where no one looked and found sanctity in silence. Story 4. The Egyptian, woman who washed the dead. The desert doesn't sleep, even in the stillness. Of dawn, the wind never stops moving. It carries the scent of earth and dry salt, and somewhere beneath that, sour oils and faint decay. You're awake long before the sun breaks over the horizon dot. You rise from your mat on the floor of your father's house. You pour water over your hands, murmur a quiet prayer to Anubis, and begin your day. You are a woman in the village of Saqqara, a widow, a mother of none. And you are a washer of the dead dot. It is not a job many envy. You do not wear fine linen or mix perfumes for temple rituals. You are not a priestess with painted eyes or a dancer for the gods. You are a servant of silence. You clean the bodies that are brought to the house of purification, the Pur Fair, a small white-walled building that stands between the living and the tomb. Today, there will be 3. You wrap your scarf tighter as you walk, head bowed, hands tucked into the folds of your faded linen dress. The streets are quiet. Only the gravediggers move before sunrise. That you reach the Pur Fair and open the shutters dot inside. Stone basins, tall clay jars of natron, reed baskets filled with linen strips, and the familiar tools of your work bronze tweezers, wooden scrapers, palm oil, beeswax. You light the brazier. The smell of old smoke and resin fills the space. You are not alone. Beside you is the chief embalmer, an old man with failing knees, but steady hands. He nods once. You nod back dot. He prepares the tools for evisceration. You prepare the cloths dot. Your first body arrives, wrapped in rough linen. A merchant's wife, middle age, died suddenly. Her family waits outside sobbing, but dry-eyed. Grief is not for the Pur Nefer. It is for the tomb dot. You begin with water got cold, poured from a tall jar over her limbs. You wash her with strips of linen soaked in scented water lotus, mint, myrrh. You rub gently, behind her ears, between her toes, a space beneath her jaw. This is not about vanity. It is about transition. Cleansing the life she no longer needs. You clip her fingernails, pluck stray hairs, rinse the body again dot. Then you pat her dry. Now comes the natron, salt gathered from the Wadi El Natron. Mixed with soda ash, it pulls moisture from the body. You pack it into every crevice, mouth, nose, underarms, groin. The body must be dry to be preserved. You are methodical, respectful. You hum as you work. A lullaby your mother sang when you were a child. You don't know why. The song just comes. The merchant's wife does not flinch. Her skin stiffens. Her lips part slightly. The chief embalmer opens her abdomen, removes the stomach, liver, intestines, lungs, places each in separate jars. You clean the cavity with palm wine. Pack it with more natron. The heart is gone. Sometimes the embalmers return it to the chest, sometimes not. The priests will place a scarab over her heart during burial, a spell, to silence her sins before judgment. You do not question. You sew her shut. You rub her skin with resin and oils. Sand slips in from the wind outside. It always does. You brush it away. Then you wrap her. First the arms, then the legs. You whisper the names of the gods under your breath as you bind her. Isis, Nephthys, Anubis, Thoth. You place amulets between the layers. A wedged eye, a jed pillar, a tiny copper ankh. You seal the wrappings with melted resin. Let it harden. By sunset, she will be placed in a painted coffin. Her family will burn incense. The priest will speak of eternity, but you will already be washing the next. The second body is a boy, 7 years old. Drowned, you pause. Your hands do not. You clean him the same. He has a scar on his chin. You brush his hair with oil. It sticks up in places. You want to smooth it down, but the oil has hardened. You leave it be. You wrap him tightly, as if still protecting him from the river. The final body is a worker from the fields. No family, no jarred organs, no tomb, just cloth, resin, a reed basket. He is buried by nightfall in a communal grave. You clean the per-nefer. Wash the basins, rinse the tools. Scatter fresh natron across the floor to absorb the scent. You wipe your hands with cloth soaked in vinegar and myrrh. Outside, the wind has shifted. The stars rise above the sand. You sit for a moment on the threshold of the per-nefer and watch the jackals move in the distance. Their ears flick. There, eyes glow. They are not feared. They are sacred. Anubis is near. You pull your scarf tighter, rub the salt from your fingers, and whisper a final prayer into the wind, because death is not dirty, but someone still has to clean it. The desert air turns colder as the moon climbs. You lie on your mat near the per-nefer. Not in your home tonight. You sleep here, where the air smells of resin and the walls hum with ancient silence. The priest has asked for another body to be prepared before sunrise. A sudden death. A land surveyor, they said, young, no family nearby. Transported from Memphis. You are too tired to walk home and return again. So you stay. The floor beneath you is smooth limestone, warm from the day's sun. You wrap yourself in your shawl, listening to the sand scrape softly across the threshold. Somewhere nearby, a donkey snorts in its sleep. And beyond that, silence. You do not sleep easily, because the salt clings to you, not just in your hair or under your nails, but somewhere deeper, somewhere behind your ribs. You carry the weight of the dead inside you, pressed into every muscle, soaked into your thoughts. This was not always your life. Once you were married. You had a small house on the edge of Saqqara, a child who never lived past naming, a husband who died before his beard had grayed. You had meant to remarry, perhaps, but the work found you first. When your husband died, the washerwomen came, watched them older than you, their backs bent, their fingers stiff with resin and linen. They hummed as they worked. One dropped a jar. Another laughed so softly it seemed like a prayer. And you thought, I could do this. I could help. The priests agreed. They trained you. Not with books, but with motion. The rhythm of rinsing, patting, wrapping, chanting. The order of limbs. The oil for each organ. The way to bend a wrist without cracking the bone. You were never taught the sacred spells. That was not for you. But you were taught care. And that, in this place, was power. Now, years later, your hands know what to do before your mind catches up. You can wrap a body blindfolded. You can tell how long someone has been dead by the sound of their breathless chest when moved. Still, not all bodies are the same. Some are easier, quiet, settled into death. Others resist, their jaws clenched. There, muscles stiff, their skin already curling at the edges like parchment left too near a flame. This land surveyor is one of the latter. He arrives in the hour before dawn, brought by ox cart from the temple gates. 2 men carry him in young, tanned, with sand still in his ears. He's wrapped in a rough shroud. No ornament, no perfume. The embalmer shrugs. Sudden fever. You nod. You set the fire. Mix the water. Wash your hands. You begin. First the eyes still open. You close them. Gently. His mouth is slack, but hard to move. You press 2 pieces of linen inside to support the cheeks. They bulge slightly. You press again. You begin the washing. There is no family to witness it. No priests to chant. Just you, the old embalmer, and a jackal howling somewhere near the edge of the desert. You whisper the names anyway. Not for the gods. For yourself. Isis, Nephthys, Anubis, Thoth. The boy's body twitches once, gas escaping the lungs. You've heard it before. But every time, it startles you. Every time, it reminds you that death is not always still. You move quickly. You clean his limbs. Remove the skin parasites. Pack the natron under his ribs, inside his mouth, under his knees. The resin stings your hands, but you've grown used to the burn. You wrap him, as best you can. There are no amulets for this one. No gold leaf. Number. Scarab. But you tuck a single reed flower beneath the final band of cloth. Just one. A weed, really. But it will go with him. When it's done, the embalmer nods and leaves. You remain. You clean the basin. Wash the blood from the tools. Empty the natron crumbs into the clay bin by the door. You scrub until the floor shines. You sweep the sand back outside. The sun is just beginning to rise. You pour water over your hands and scrub until the smell is gone. You do this every day. It never truly disappears. But you try. Your hands are cracked, your knuckles red. You flex them once, twice. Feel the resin deep in your skin. You take a cloth and rub hard. Still, the salt clings. Later that morning, you walk home. Slowly, your feet heavy. Your scarf pulled close around your face. The village is waking. A child runs past you, laughing. A woman yells at her goat. Life continues. You pass the temple. You see the priests performing rites. Tourists, wealthier nobles from Thebes, stand watching. They sip date wine. One fans herself. You walk past them unnoticed. No. One thinks to ask who dressed the bodies they bury. No one asks who prepares them to meet the gods. You do not need their thanks. But sometimes you wonder, if the salt never leaves your hands, do the dead carry part of you with them, too? The sun is high, but your home stays dim. Thick linen curtains keep the heat out. Dust drifts in shafts of light. You sit on a low stool, soaking your hands in vinegar and oil. The cracks sting. You bite your lip and wait for the pain to pass. Work is done for the day. No more bodies have come. The embalmer is napping beneath a palm mat in the Pernaffair. You heard his snores echo off the stone as you left. The priests are performing a procession for a noble woman's heart, which will be buried separately in a box lined with cedar. You weren't needed for that, Dot. Instead, you rest. You stare at the reed basket beside the wall inside, a pile of used linen, stained yellow and brown. Cloths that will be rinsed, dried, burned, or repurposed, depending on their state. Some of them once wrapped a child, some a thief, some a nobleman. The cloth never tells you who it belonged to. But your hands remember. You lean your head against the wall. Outside, the wind picks up. It carries grit. You hear a clay jar rattle on its shelf. You think of the land surveyor, the one who came alone. You wonder if anyone will ever know how carefully you wrapped his arms, how you smoothed his hair, how you didn't rush, even when there was no one watching. You wonder if that counts for anything. The neighbors don't speak. To you much, not out of rudeness, but distance. Some are uncomfortable. They think you carry death like a perfume. Others just don't know what to say. Dot. You see them sometimes, whispering when you pass. Your hands still white with salt. Your scarf smelling of cedarwood in silence. But just once a woman knocked on your door. She was young, shaking. Her husband had died in the night. The temple would come for the body, but she didn't want strangers to touch him first. She asked you how to wash the face of someone you love. You didn't speak. You just showed her. You took her hands, placed a damp cloth in her palms, and guided them over a copper bowl. She watched you. You watched her. She left crying. But quietly, Dot, the next morning, her husband arrived at the Père, clean, hair oiled, wrapped gently in linen. Dot. No one asked how. You still think of her sometimes. The way she held the cloth like it might break. The way her eyes didn't close, even when tears blurred her vision. That was a kind of holiness, too. The priests won't say that, but you know. You clean the Père not for gods, but for grief. You wrap bodies for those who are left behind, for silence, for memory, for all the small, unnoticed gestures that mark the difference between abandonment and farewell. Later that night, a storm rolls in from the west. Not rain. Egypt rarely weeps. Sand, a wall of it, low and brown, sliding over the horizon like a dark tide. You return to the Père to seal the shutters. Sand will get in anyway. It always does. But you try. You do what you can. You light a single oil lamp. The flame flickers. Dot. The wind howls against the walls. You sit for a while, alone, listening. You think of the bodies you've wrapped over the years. Hundreds, maybe more. You don't remember all their names, but you remember their feet, their hair, the curve of their ribs, the way linen stretches tighter around elbows, the way resin smells different when it's mixed with honey. You remember the silences between steps. You wonder, as the storm rages, if the gods truly notice the care you give, or if they, too, take you for granted. But deep in your chest, a quiet voice says, no one else will know. But the dead remember. Dot. And as the wind pours sand across the threshold, burying footprints, filling jars, and coating the air with dust, you smile, because someone will find your tools someday. A copper basin, a pile of cloths, a cracked pot of natron. They will wonder who used them. And maybe, if they listen closely, they will feel your hands still moving, still cleaning, still whispering names. Dot. Still tending to the forgotten, still wrapping the silence. Story 5. The Prison Scribe of Edinburgh Castle. It is the year 1645. You wake to the sound of iron on stone. The guard is dragging a pike across the prison bars to rouse the cells. His boots scrape the floor. Someone groans. Someone spits. Someone mumbles a prayer. You rise slowly from your cot, joints aching, back stiff. You are not a prisoner. Not exactly. You are the prison scribe, not because you chose it or trained for it, but because you were caught forging a merchant's signature 5 years ago, and instead of hanging, they offered you this. Write what they tell you. Copy letters, keep the ledgers. Record the confessions. In exchange, you stay in the dungeon, not in a cell, but near one. A small room carved into the castle's lower wall. It floods when it rains too hard. Rats come at night. The air is always wet, but you're not dead. And you have ink. The day begins with the wardens delivering the daily orders. A thin stack of parchment, a broken-nibbed quill. You set to work in the flickering light of a single tallow candle. Your table is stone. The ink freezes in winter, molds in summer. The feathered quill you use has been recut so many times it barely resembles its original form. You scrape it across the parchment, recording names, sentences, illnesses. That's most of the entries read the same. John McTiernan, suspected of unlawful assembly. Whipped twice. Awaiting judgment. Margaret Fletcher, harboring rebels. 2. Beheld for questioning. Unknown man, mute, found with papers. Refuse his name. Housed in East Wing. No one thanks you. You're not part of the guards. You're not part of the prisoners. You're somewhere in between. A ghost with ink-stained fingers. Sometimes prisoners speak to you. Sometimes they beg. You never promise anything. You've learned the hard way that listening can be a crime. You simply write, record, keep your head down, but even ghosts have memories. You remember the night you were arrested, the rain, the stamp of horses on cobblestones, the way the merchant's son shouted forger before the guards even questioned you. You remember the ink on your palms. You remember the silence when you were offered the job. They called it mercy. You call it something else. Your room is cold today. Damp creeping in through the cracks. The rat near your chamber pot scurries at the sound of footsteps. You dip your pen again. More names. The prisoner in cell 14 died last night. James Cray, age 42, ribs broken, infection, buried without ceremony. You write it quickly. Dry the ink with sand. Fold the page. No one mourns. Another man will be chained to that wall by nightfall. In the afternoon, the guards bring you something different. A confession. Handwritten. Smudged. Possibly coerced. Clean it up, they say. You read it slowly. The words shake. The prisoner was likely beaten. The ink is blotted, but the meaning is clear. He confesses to spying, to reading books, to writing poems about Cromwell's men. You copy it word for word. Smoother, straighter. You make it legible so it can be read at trial or execution. You no longer flinch. Your fingers are permanently stained. Your nails dark. The inside of your nose always smells of damp parchment and candle smoke. But at night, when the last guard has passed and the dungeon settles into silence, you pull out a small scrap of paper. You hide beneath your mattress. It is not official. Is not ordered. It is your own. A poem, maybe, or a letter to no one. Or just words. You write them in tiny script, by memory, from before the cell, from when you walked freely, from when your hands copied Shakespeare into tavern books for coin. I am not the man they chained. I am the ink they tried to bury. You fold the page. Hide it again. Outside, a prisoner coughs in the dark. Someone cries out in Gaelic. Another mutters a prayer in Latin. And you dip your pen again. Because even in this place, someone has to remember the names, even if they are never spoken again. Morning. Fog coils like a damp rope around the base of the castle. From your window slit, no bigger than your hand, you can barely make out the shapes of chimneys rising from the town below. Somewhere out there, life stirs. Carts being dragged through mud, Fish being sold on the quay, a baby's sharp cry curling through a back alley. But here, in the belly of Edinburgh Castle, the air is colder. Still Dot and today, you are writing. Names that no one will remember. You sit hunched on the uneven stone, your cloak pulled tight over your knees. The guards have brought down a pile of intake scrolls fresh. Prisoners, rebels, debtors, drunken brawlers, Catholics, Presbyterians, dissenters of every flavor. The castle doesn't care about cause, only quiet. You begin the routine. Name, age, place of origin, condition upon arrival, sentence, Branston, Hugh, 36, from Ayrshire, coughing blood, Edith Ransom, widow, from Leith, in possession of 3 Catholic rosaries, child, unnamed, found with fleeing tenant farmers, cried throughout, questioning. You pause. The child is only 5 or 6. No name recorded. The scroll is torn. The ink faded. You chew the end of your quill. What will become of him? Will he be housed? Forgotten? Traded for silence? You've seen it before. Quiet removals. No records. So you write what you can. Child. Male, approx. Age 6. Silent after 3rd day. Fed daily. It isn't much, but it's more than nothing, because you've come to understand that being written down is, in a way, being remembered. And being remembered just barely is a kind of resistance. A guard stops by your alcove with a bowl of barley porridge and a strip of gray meat. He doesn't look at you, just sets it down on your ledger and walks off. You eat half. Save the rest. You keep a crust in your sleeve softened with water when you need it to feed the mouse who lives behind the hearth brick. He's more reliable than the guards. He doesn't lie, doesn't leer, just appears like clockwork. When the ink dries, you name him Hobbs. You are not supposed to name anything. It's dangerous, naming things. Names imply meaning, personhood, and in this place, meaning is tightly rationed. The mouse doesn't know he has a name. But you know, and that's enough. Midday, a strange request comes down from above. The laird of the castle, some pompous cousin of the duke, wants a hand-drawn ledger of punishment. A decorative scroll that lists punishments by name and instrument. For visitors. For noble guests. A showpiece. You stare at the guard. He shrugs. He wants it pretty, he says. Something to hang near the oubliette. You take out your best parchment. Begin. 20 lashes for unlicensed sermons. Thumb. Screws for coin forgers. Brink for gossiping wives. Pillory for insolence. You decorate it with simple ink flourishes. No gold, just clean lines. Clear letters. It is the most beautiful lie you've ever written. By the time you finish, your hands ache. You dip the quill one last time. Write your initials in the corner tiny, hidden in the loops of the scrollwork. It's the only mark of yourself you're allowed to leave. The guard takes it without a word. When he's gone, you stare at your fingers, the ink crusted in your cuticles, the cold creeping under your nails. You press your hands together. Think of the first name you ever forged your brother's. A travel pass. He never knew. He made it through the border safely, thinking it had been a gift from the local magistrate. He still writes you once a year, from France. No address. Just a note tucked into the boot of a traveling actor. Always the same. I hope your hands are warm. You never reply, but you keep the scraps under your cot. Late that evening, a guard brings you a different kind of scroll, a letter, unsealed, from a prisoner. To his daughter. He wants you to copy it neatly. The man cannot write, but the words are his. You read it twice. He tells her he misses her laugh. He asks if the cat is still afraid of thunder. He tells her not to fear men in red coats. He says, they took me because I would not lie. The Letter isn't political. It's soft, domestic, human. You copy it, exactly as he said it. You fold it into a clean envelope. You lick the wax and press it shut. But then you do something you've never done before. You write your own line at the bottom small, in the crease where it might not be noticed. He spoke her name like it was the only thing keeping him alive. You set the letter aside. You do not sleep well that night, because some names don't vanish. Some names hang in the air like breath in cold stone. Waiting, wanting, you don't know if the letter will ever be delivered. But if it is, maybe someone will read that line, and maybe, just maybe, they'll remember the prisoner. Or you, even for a moment. You wake in darkness. The candle burned out hours ago. You smell it, the last curl of tallow wax, the faint sting of ash. A rat scurries somewhere across the floor. Hobbs, your mouse, has taken his bit of crust and vanished into his hole behind. The hearth. You sit up slowly, joints cracking, shoulders stiff. You've been sleeping hunched again, colorless, pressed between your ledgers and your silence. And today, it ends. Not your life, but your job. They told you yesterday, in clipped, impatient tones, the new governor's bringing his own men, has his own scribe. You'll be sent to the outer walls. Labor detail. No more ledgers. No more names. Just shoveling snow in winter and hauling buckets in summer. For as long as your body holds, you didn't argue. You've learned that words, in certain rooms, make nothing but noise. In the final hours of your last day as scribe, you do something you haven't done in years. You open the drawer beneath your cot. Inside, scraps of parchment, dozens of them, torn corners, smudged, names, lines of half-finished poems, quotes overheard through cell bars, spilled thoughts in ink older than the walls. You lay them out, one by one. I did not mean to die here. There is a child upstairs who believes his father will come home. The firing me was not treason. My mother's face was the last soft thing I touched. Forgive the sound my neck made. You wrote these, not officially, not for orders. You wrote them in the quiet moments between lists and lashes. Some were the words of prisoners, some your own, some ... both. You gather them now, bind them with twine, wrap them in the scrap of your old cloak, the one you wore before the forging, before the dungeon, before your name was reduced to scribe. You don't plan to take them with you. You walk, barefoot and slow, to the far end of the corridor, past the oubliette, past the cell that used to leak so badly no one could last. A night in it, to the old stone alcove behind the chapel door, the place where the lime dust still clings to the stone, where even rats don't go. You kneel, lift the loose stone. You've kept this hiding place for 5 years. Inside, you find the only things you've ever claimed: a sealed bottle of ink, a piece of glass from a shattered window, and a tiny carved figurine of Saint Columba no larger than your thumb. You don't remember where you got it, only that it fit in your palm. You place the bundle of pages inside. You close the stone. You say nothing. There is no prayer for this. No record. You return to your room. The guards are waiting. They do not ask if you're ready. They hand you a coarse linen shirt, worn boots, and a rusted shovel. Outer courtyard. One says, snow's piling up. You nod. On your way out, you pass the scribe's bench. A younger man is already sitting there. His ink pot is full, his fingers clean. He wears gloves. He doesn't look at you. That's fine. You step into the morning. The courtyard is blinding white. Snow drifts in waves over the stone steps. You lower your head, begin to shovel. Each scoop lands with a soft thud. Each breath curls into the cold like a question left unanswered. The work is simple, brutal, endless. but it is also. Honest dot, no need for signatures. No lies on parchment, just movement. Bone and breath dot days pass. You lose track of time. You begin to speak less. Think less dot, but at night. You remember the pages. You imagine someone years, maybe centuries from now pulling back that stone. Finding the bundle. Reading the words. Frowning. Pausing dot, and in that pause, they will say aloud the names dot, not just the prisoners, not just the dead, but yours. Because no one carved it into the wall, dot, no one sang it in court, dot, no one wrote it in the official books, but your name was kept quietly, stubbornly between the lines. And that, you realize, is all a scribe ever really wants dot to be the thing that stayed behind, even after the ink fades, even after the paper burns, even after the shovels are passed to someone else. Story 6. The Legion's blade cleaner. It's morning in the Roman frontier camp near the Rhine. Mist clings to the damp leather tents, and the scent of wet ash and iron hangs in the air like a warning. Somewhere down the camp road, a legionary relieves himself behind a cart. 2 centurions argue over something too small to matter. And you're already awake, dot, because the blades are never clean. You sit beneath the awning of the armament tent, hunched over a bloodied gladius. It's nicked from last night's drills. You scrape the edge with a worn whetstone, one stroke at a time, until the metal whispers dot your fingers are stained, not red, but the blackish brown of dried blood, old oil, and fire soot. It doesn't come off anymore. The other men joke you've grown another skin. They're not wrong. You are not a soldier. You are not paid for courage. You don't wear armor. You don't train with wooden swords or march in columns dot, you clean. You sharpen, you scrub, every evening. After the drills, the soldiers return and toss their weapons into your tent like discarded bones. You sort through the mess, glady, spears, arrowheads, buckles, daggers. Some have dried blood on the hilt. Some are sticky with pitch. Some smell of meat. You don't ask questions, but you know more than they think. You know which soldiers grip their swords too high, which ones panic and let their blades rust in the sheath, which lie about their kills and which polish their hilts before every campaign dot. Their stories are written in steel dot, and you read them with your hands. Today, one blade comes in with a chip near the hilt. You recognize it belongs to Gaius Faber, a braggart who once insulted your father. You fix it anyway. You grind the edge, rinse it with vinegar, rub it down with a cloth soaked in goose fat. He won't notice the work, but if you didn't do it, he'd die holding a broken edge. You move on a javelin with a split shaft, a helmet with a dent that crushed the cheek guard, a short sword with notches from someone else's ribs. You work fast. Quietly dot, the camp wakes around you. Trumpets blow. Bread is passed. Someone plays dice near the latrine pit. An officer screams at a boy who spilled water near the command tent. No. One looks at you. You're not important until you are. Because when the horn sounds for formation, every man reaches for a blade, and every one of those blades has passed through your hands. You've touched more weapons than any general. You've held more violence than any senator. Your fingerprints are on 1,000 deaths, but they'll never write your name on a plaque. They might not even know it. In the afternoon, you melt fat in a pan and mix it with beeswax, your own concoction. It keeps the metal from rusting. A soldier once mocked it. Then he came back from Germania with a blade rotted black. Now he uses twice as much. You work beneath the weight of 12 tents. Horses pass. Boots stomp. Your tent smells of oil and iron and fire. The medic drops by. He hands you a bloody dagger and a half-splintered bone needle. You glance at him. You want me to clean a stitch hook? You ask. He shrugs. You know better than I do. So you clean it. Because someone has to dot by evening, your aching dot not from combat, but from repetition. The grinding, the oiling, the heating, and the cooling. Your fingers tremble. Your shoulders burn. But there's one more blade. A new one. Longer, heavier. Still stiff with temple issue grease. It hasn't seen battle yet. You unwrap it. A fresh soldier's sword. You run your finger down its edge and pause dot too sharp. Too clean. Too proud. You dull it slightly at the hilt. You oil the guard. You wrap the grip with finer leather. He'll thank you when it doesn't slip in blood. You place it in the rack with the others dot tomorrow. It may return chipped. Or not. At all dot but tonight. It shines. And you sit back, wiping your hands, watching the campfire rise beyond the flap of your tent. Soldiers are drinking, laughing, singing, and you have sharpened every song. You sleep in a corner of the supply tent, not because it's comfortable. It isn't, but because it's warm enough to keep your fingers from going stiff. There's a pile of firewood by your feet and a sack of aroids under your head for a pillow. You wrap your cloak tight. The wax and linen smell from your tools never leaves your clothes dot at some point in the night. You wake to shouting dot, not the usual bar brawl or a soldier dreaming of war. This is sharp, specific, urgent dot. You slip on your sandals. Step outside. The centurion is marching down the line with 2 optios behind him. Their torches flicker red across the row of tents. You catch fragments. Won't hold formation, ambushed patrol. They're bringing him in. You duck back inside your tent. You don't ask questions. You just check the buckets of fat and vinegar. Lay out the whetstones. Unroll the cloth strips. You've done this before. The men won't talk about it, but when soldiers come back bloodied, their gear always needs you first. And tonight, they do dot near midnight. The injured arrive dot 3 stretchers. 1 body bag. The soldiers are silent. One of them drops his sword in your tent with a hand that won't stop shaking. You take it from him without speaking dot. It's soaked. Blood in the hilt. Bits of hair in the groove. You don't flinch. You dip it in vinegar. Scrub gently. Pull the blade from the sheath and test the weight dot. It wobbles. Bent in battle. You heat the spine and hammer it back on your anvil, 1 stroke at a time. You cool it slowly, not too fast, or it'll snap. You wipe the blade with your rag. The rag turns crimson. You don't stop dot. Another soldier drops his pilum. The tip is cracked. You replace it. Tie it back with fresh binding. The shaft is warped. You plane it with your knife until it lies straight. Again, they don't speak to you, but you hear their silence. You hear how their boots scuff the ground slower tonight. How no one rags, no one hums. They just pass by your tent like shadows. You recognize one of them. Marcus, young, red hair, always fiddling with his belt. He's quiet now, standing just outside the tent. You hand him his sword. He doesn't take it. He just looks at you. Did I kill him? He asks. You say nothing. You are not a priest. You are not trained in mercy. You clean the things that kill. You don't judge the ones who use them, but you look at his blade. There's a chip in it, a deep one near the tip. You smooth it out. Oil it. Wrap the handle tighter. You set it back in the rack. I don't know who killed him, you say quietly, but your blade's ready again. He nods. Walks off. You never see him again. That night, you sit by your coals. The tent flap. Rustles. The blades gleam faintly in the FIRELIGHT. You think of how many you've cleaned. Hundreds. Thousands. Each one a tool. A story. A weight. Sometimes they come back whole. Sometimes just the hilt. You remember the first time you held a broken blade. You were 15. A blacksmith's apprentice in Gaul. A Roman trader brought it to your master with a bag of coins. It saved my life. he said, but it didn't survive. You had stared at the crack, at the dried blood. You wondered what kind of man had swung it. You never got an answer. Now, years later, you hold that same silence in your own hands, and you understand? The blade may break, but the story doesn't. You place the last sword in its slot, douse the fire, lie back on the hard dirt floor, and you dream not of war, not of soldiers, but of metal cooling slowly in your hands, waiting to be used again. The next morning, the camp is slow to wake. A thin mist still clings to the earth like a second skin. Fires crackle reluctantly. A few soldiers stand at the edge of the parade ground, rubbing their arms and not speaking. The dead are being buried. They do it quickly. No ceremony. Just two men with shovels, digging into the frozen earth behind the supply carts. The stretcher lies off to the side. The body is already wrapped in a torn blanket, tied at the feet like a parcel. You watch for a moment, then turn away. You have work to do. The blades returned from last night's ambush are dulled and misaligned. You unroll your cloth bundle, pull out your whetstone, and begin again pressing the edge down, sliding the stone across it in slow, careful arcs. You whisper to the steel without realizing it. Words that aren't words, just breath and rhythm. Every blade remembers something, and the ones from last night remember too much. One sword comes in with a deep fracture through the midsection. You press your thumb against the crack. You know what this means. Someone blocked a spear thrust too hard. The blade held barely. You heat it. You hammer the edge. You hear it scream in the metal. Your master used to say, that steel has memory, that once it bends in fear, it always bends easier next time. But if tempered right, reheated, and cooled slowly, patiently, it becomes stronger, more forgiving. You wonder if that's true of people. A rider approaches the tent. You squint. It's a courier from the governor's staff. He's holding a wrapped object neatly bound, oiled leather. A blade, but not a common one. When he hands it to you, you feel it immediately. Weightier, the balance perfect. This was forged by a true artisan, not stamped out in batches, but shaped with care. You unwrap it. It's the sword of a tribune, finer than anything you've handled in months. The courier speaks quickly. Dropped in the river. Found after the skirmish. He died on the field. We're sending the blade back to Rome. It must be cleaned, preserved, polished. You nod. He doesn't wait for an answer. Just turns and rides. Sit down with it. And begin. There's mud in the grooves near the crossguard. Dried blood along the fuller. A hairline fracture where it may have struck bone. This blade has taken life. And lost it. But it still wants to shine. You take your time. You heat the oil gently. Dip the cloth. Wipe the surface in long, even strokes. You avoid harsh scrubbing. You treat it like something sacred, not because of the tribune, but because of the steel. Hours pass. The sun rises higher. The camp moves on. A new patrol is dispatched to the forest's edge. Spears are counted. Helmets distributed. You keep working. When the sword is clean, you polish the leather grip. You seal the edge in wax. You wrap it again, tighter than before. You tie the knot slowly, as if binding a wound. Then you place it in a wooden crate marked for transport. It's ready. You step outside the tent. The wind is colder now, sharper. You watch as two mules pull a cart toward the southern road. It creaks and lurches, heavy with crates and papers and helmets. And the sword. You don't wave, but you feel it's something leaving you. Not just the steel, but the memory. You turn back inside. There are more blades to clean. You pick up the next one. It's dented, dull, forgotten, in a pile. A name scratched onto the hilt is nearly gone. You wonder how long he lasted. You'll never know, But the blade speaks anyway, it says. I was held by someone once. You run the whetstone over the edge, slow and even, and reply, I know. Story 7. The baker's daughter who worked through the London plague. London, 1665. The air is heavy with heat and silence. Not the good kind, the kind that means rest, or a nap, or a long walk in the orchard. No, this is the silence of absence, of missing feet on cobbled streets, of shutters closed not to block the sun, but to block the sickness. You're awake before dawn. Again, because the ovens don't stop, not even during plague. You are 16. You are the daughter of the baker, who lives 3 streets off Pudding Lane. His name is Thomas. Yours is never written on the flour sacks. But your hands are the ones kneading the dough, cutting the loaves, cleaning the soot today. Like every day for the last 6 weeks, your brother does not come downstairs. He caught the fever 3 days ago. He lies in the loft, sheets soaked through, with sweat, a cloth over his mouth. Your mother sits beside him, praying, crying, hoping the marks don't come. But someone still has to bake the bread, and that someone is you. You pull your apron tight. Wipe your face with the back of your arm. Open the storeroom. It smells like yeast and wood rot. You count the flour sacks again. Fewer than yesterday. The mills are closed. Grain is harder to get. You set the fire in the oven, dry sticks. Then, logs and coal. It hisses. Ash floats upward. Dust coats your sleeves. You mix the dough in silence. The neighbors haven't come in days. Those who haven't fled the city have sealed themselves indoors. You leave the bread on a stool outside the shop each morning. Someone takes it. Leaves coins, sometimes, other. Times, nothing is left. You don't complain. You just make more bread. The dough sticks to your fingers. The yeast smells stronger in the heat. You knead with your elbows when your hands grow tired. The oven groans. Your father watches you from his seat near the window. He hasn't spoken much since the bellman marked the house across the street. Plague, the man had said. 3 bodies in one night. They never reopened their shutters. You baked 12 loaves this morning. Round, cracked, burnt, slightly on the edges, because you had to tend the fire twice. You line them on the WINDOWSIL one by one. They disappear. You never see who takes them. You sweep the floor. Ash mixes with flour. Your hands are gray. You cough. Just once. You hold your breath after it passes. You scrape the dough from the bowls. Save it to start tomorrow's batch. Your sister only 8 sits on the stairs, holding a doll with one button eye. She doesn't ask questions anymore. You hum a lullaby while you work, not because it helps the dough, but because the silence is worse. Later that afternoon, a man comes to the door. He doesn't knock, just leans against the frame. A priest, sweating. He doesn't step inside. He gestures instead. Loaves for the parish, he says. You give him 6. He leaves a pouch of coins. Doesn't meet your eye. He walks away too quickly. You go back to the oven. Mix again. The fire takes longer to catch this time. You wonder how long you can keep this going. The miller is sick. The ferry has stopped. The price of flour has doubled. The apprentices have fled. The bell tolls more often now, sometimes twice in an hour. And yet the bread disappears. Each morning. Without fail. You don't know who takes it. You only know this: they're still alive, and as long as they are, you'll keep feeding them. The bell tolls again. You've lost count now. How many times in a day? How many days since it started? Some say it rings every time a body cart rolls down the alley. Others say it's the church trying to remind the living they're still here. You wonder who still listens. Your father doesn't move from his chair. He used to rise with you, adjust the shutters, start the fire. He used to hum under his breath as he folded dough, fingers always dusted with flour. Now his apron hangs unused by the door, still stiff with soot and old sweat. His eyes are open, but not always seeing. Your brother hasn't spoken in 2 days. Fever climbs and falls like the tides. Sometimes he sweats so much the bedding soaks through to the straw. Sometimes he goes silent, mouth open, eyes flickering under lids. He hasn't coughed blood. Not yet. You take it as a good sign. Your mother won't leave his side. You feed her crusts of bread and cool water in a ladle. She nods but never looks up. Your little sister sleeps beside the hearth now, curled in a shawl like a kitten at no longer MEWS. So the bakery is yours. You tend the fire. You mix the dough. You sweep the floor in long, patient arcs, like a priest tending the temple after the gods have fled. The neighbors come less frequently. The coins left on the stool are fewer, but still they come. A loaf gone by midday. Another taken just after sunset. A copper farthing left wrapped in paper with a smeared note. Bless you. You don't know who wrote it, but you read it twice. You hide the note in the folds of your apron. There are still people alive in this city. You tell yourself this as you crush rosemary into the crust, as you dust the bread with flour to hide the cracks, as you count how many more days of yeast you have before the jar runs dry. You tell yourself this while you listen to the street. Because now, more than ever, the quiet is loud. You hear the scratching of rats in the eaves, the distant clatter of hooves as plague carts roll through with tar-stained men ringing iron bells and calling, "Bring out your dead." You hear the wind rattle loose shutters, hear doors being bolted shut. But sometimes, just before dawn, you hear something else. Footsteps. Soft, hesitant. You never look through the shutter. You never want to see their face, just in case they carry the mark. But they pause by the stool. You hear a breath, a hand on wood, a rustle of cloth. And then they are gone. You've started baking smaller loaves just to stretch the flour. You soak them in milk and honey so they feel heavier, more generous. You imagine the hands that take them, fingers, cracked skin, maybe a child, maybe someone who hasn't spoken aloud in days. You imagine they taste the bread slowly. You imagine they remember you. One afternoon, the priest returns. He doesn't ask for loaves. He stands outside, holding a scrap of fabric tied with twine. He places it on the doorstep and steps back. You open the door cautiously. It's cloth. A scarf, rolled around something warmed out bread. Yours, baked by someone else. A different shape, different scent. But bread, all the same. The priest nods. From the nuns, he says. They said you should eat too. You blinked. You can't remember the last time someone baked for you. You take it with both hands, close the door. Later that night, your father stirs. He whispers your name. You rush to him. His voice is low, throaty. Still baking? He asks. You nod. He smiles just faintly, just for a breath. Good girl, he says. Then his eyes close again. The smile stays. You sit beside him for a long time. You place your hands in your lap. And for the first time in weeks, you let yourself cry. Not because you've given up. Not because the oven is cold. Not because the street is too quiet. But because you are still here, still baking. And someone, somewhere, is still eating. Autumn arrives quietly. The leaves fall like silent confetti, damp and yellow. The Thames turns sluggish. The markets stay closed. Even the sky seems to hold its breath. But the plague bell tolls less often now. The dead cart didn't come. Yesterday, you noticed. You also noticed that the loaf you left on the stool by the bakery wasn't taken. It stayed there, cooling in the mist. Flies found it. You wrapped it again in fresh cloth and left it out a second night. Still no one took it. The next morning, you don't bake. Not because you're too tired, but because you need to see. You open the shutters for the first time in weeks. The street looks smaller than you remember. Empty. A broom lies near the well. A bucket has tipped over. Someone's door hangs open ajar. Forgotten. You count the windows. 6 boarded. 3 blackened by soot. The house where the tailor used to laugh so loudly is silent now. But then movement. A girl, maybe your age, steps into the alley with a bundle under her arm. She moves like she's forgotten how. Her eyes flick everywhere. She's wearing 2 mismatched shoes. She sees you. You don't wave, but you nod, and she nods back. Later, you relight the oven. The fire hesitates. You coax it gently, feed it slowly. The warmth returns like an old friend you're not sure still loves you. You mix a new dough. It feels different, looser, warmer. You hum again. Not to push away the silence this time, but to fill it with something familiar. Your mother comes downstairs. You hear her behind you, light steps, unsure. Her face is pale, but her eyes meet yours. She places her hands in the dough beside yours. No words. Just bread. You break the silence with a whisper. He's sleeping. She nods. His fever's gone. You both stop kneading for a moment. Then you continue. That afternoon, you leave 3 loaves on the stool. This time, you sit behind the shutter and watch. The girl with the mismatched shoes returns. She doesn't sneak. She approaches openly, picks up the loaf, holds it to her chest, walks away slowly, like she's carrying something sacred. Later, a boy comes, younger, holding a stick. He hesitates, then takes the 2nd loaf, leaves behind a single chicken feather. You laugh. The sound startles your mother, but she laughs. 2. The 3rd loaf remains until dusk. That's when the priest returns. His robes are cleaner now, his eyes less heavy. He bows slightly. The bishop has asked me to gather names, he says. Those who kept the flame burning. You furrow your brow. He continues. Not all survived, but some did, because someone left them bread. You glance at your hands, still dusted with flour. The skin between your fingers cracked from heat and water. You look up. You say, it was nothing. But you know it wasn't. He smiles. We'll write it down anyway. He places a small roll of parchment on your step. Inside is a list of names. Some crossed out, some circled. At the bottom, space left blank. Write yours if you like. You don't, but you keep the scroll. And that night, before bed, you press your name into the corner with the blunt end of a nail just faintly. Just enough to be read. If someone looks close enough. In the weeks that follow, the bells stop. Dead cart doesn't return. Children begin to cry in the streets again. A market stall opens. The smell of apples returns to the air. Someone plays a fiddle, awkwardly, from a 2nd-story window. And every morning, a loaf still waits on the stool outside the bakery, even when no one takes it, even when the flour runs low again, because you remember how it felt to take something warm from the hands of someone who never asked your name. Because sometimes survival is shaped like a crust of bread. Sometimes resistance smells like yeast. And sometimes a girl with cracked hands and soot in her hair can feed a city. Even if they never write her name down at all. Story 8. The Boy Who Ground. Herbs for Nostradamus. It is the year 1546. In the town of Salon de Provence, where dust settles into the cobbled corners and the air smells faintly of river reeds. A boy wakes before the rooster crows. He is 12. Small for his age, sharp at the edges. His name is never written on prescriptions, never spoken in the salon of nobles who come for tinctures and omens. But he is the boy who grinds the herbs for Nostradamus. You rise in the gray light. Slip into your rough tunic. Wash your hands in the water basin stale, tinged green at the rim. You tie back your hair. The mortar and pestle wait for you on the table. You begin with dried rose hips, crushed slowly, rhythmically, with just enough pressure to bruise the oils out, but not enough to turn it bitter. Then the marjoram, and the wormwood. Your hands remember. The order better than your mind does. You measure by feel, by scent, by the weight in your palm. The room smells like a dream inside a fever. Herbs hang from the rafters: sage, lavender, rue. Glass jars line the wall, labeled in Latin and ink so faded only you can still read them. There's belladonna sealed in wax. Ground pearls in a pouch made of bat leather. A bottle of mercury sits wrapped in wool, shivering slightly with cold. Menace, Nostradamus isn't up yet. He never is, at this hour. He works late, writes even later. You've seen the candles burning in his upper room past midnight. You've heard the scratching of his quill through the floorboards. Sometimes he mutters as he writes. Names, years, numbers. Other times, prayers. You aren't sure which is stranger, but in the daylight, he's calm, measured. He speaks softly. He hands you lists, each more difficult than the last. Yesterday, he asked you to prepare a solution for plague boils using myrrh, vinegar, and onions. Soak linen in it, he said, and wrap the body, even the dead. You didn't ask why today. The list reads differently. Prepare, thyme distillate, dried hyssop, crushed, turpentine 2 drops only. 1 black feather, 1 slip of paper with a name written once and burned. You blink. You know the first part. Medicine, you know the second. Ritual, you've helped him prepare both. You've boiled snakeskins in milk. You've weighed amber dust. You've watched him read cards under candlelight with such intensity you forgot to breathe. Some say he's a prophet. Others, a fraud. A physician. A sorcerer. To you, he's a man who forgets to eat, but never forgets to thank you when you hand him a clean towel. And for that, you stay. You grind the thyme carefully. The smell is sharp, pleasant. The feather you pluck from the raven that lives in the cage near the window. You place it beside the herbs. You do not ask who the name belongs to, but you burn the paper anyway. The flame curls it into ash, which you collect with the tip of a spoon. You add it to the mixture. He will use it later, for a cure or a curse. Never ask which. The door creaks behind you. You turn. Nostradamus is awake, and his eyes are tired, rimmed with red. He smells of ink and lavender. He does not speak. He simply looks at what you've laid out. He nods. Well done, he says. And with that, he begins. He dips his fingers into the mixture, tastes a pinch, winces, adds vinegar, warms it over the flame. You watch. You hand him the cloth when he gestures. You clean the spoon when he finishes. You do not ask what it's for. Later, he'll send you to the market. Later, he'll hand you another list. But for now, you sit on the stool near the fire, your hands sore, your head full of scents that don't belong together. And you wonder if history remembers his predictions. Will it ever remember the hands that prepared them? There's a box in the back room you're never supposed to touch. It's locked with a strip of red wax, sealed with Nostradamus' signet, a carved star inside a circle, pressed deep enough that you can still see the crack where the wax hardened too fast. You dust around it each week. Never open it, but you wonder. Everyone in Salon de Provence wonders what he keeps hidden. Some think it's a recipe for eternal life. Others whisper, it's letters from the Pope or the devil. You don't believe either. But you do believe in secrets, because you carry one too. You've been copying his notes. Not all of them. Just the ones he discards. He writes fast. Sometimes on scraps, sometimes on torn parchment. When the ink smears or the lines falter, he crumples them and tosses them into the bin near your stool. But you've saved them. At night, you smooth them out. Hide them in your satchel. Recopy the words slowly, letter by letter. Most make no sense numbers, stars, shapes, riddles. But some feel like stories, or warnings, or prayers written by someone too tired to kneel. You don't understand it all, but you want to. This morning, he hands you another list. This one is different. Mandrake root, crushed coral, tincture of poppy, a sheet of black linen, one quill feather not used, a piece of paper, blank, do not burn. You nod. You gather the items. The mandrake smells like wet soil and something darker. The coral grinds into a pinkish powder. The poppy tincture you measure carefully, 3 drops only. It stains your fingers a dull brown. You hand him the items on a silver tray. He doesn't thank you this time. His eyes are distant. Focused. He takes the blank paper last, lays it flat, dips the feather into a small bottle of clear liquid, something you didn't prepare. You lean forward, curious. He notices. Lemon juice, he says. You blink. Invisible ink? He nods. Then he begins to write. You can't see the words. Just the motion of his hand, swift, controlled, like someone carving into silence. When he finishes, he holds the paper over the candle, gently, not too close. The letters bloom in pale brown, like bruises on skin. You read only a few words before he lowers the flame. When the towers fall, a kingdom buried under the year of fire. You swallow. What is it? You ask. He doesn't answer. He folds the paper and tucks it into his sleeve. Take the rest to the apothecary, he says. They'll know what to do. You obey. You leave the house, clutching a cloth bundle of herbs to your chest. The town is still sleepy. A few vendors arrange their stalls. Children chase chickens near the well. You stop by the edge of the square. There's a new poster on the wall. A notice from the council. Plague cases rising. Wash water with vinegar. Avoid foreign merchants. Pray. You touch the herbs in your bag and feel the poppy tincture shift. The apothecary nods when you arrive. Takes the bundle. Offers you a crust of bread in return. You thank him. Walk home slowly. When you return, Nostradamus is gone. Out walking, likely. Or meeting someone. You go to clean the workroom. The mortar is still wet. The bottle of lemon juice still open. The feather quill lies where he left it. And beneath the tray, a second piece of paper. You freeze. It's blank. But the ink stain on the corner suggests it was used. Maybe he forgot it. Maybe he left it for you. You hold it over the flame. Letters appear. Shaky, faint, but real. They will forget your face. They will never speak your name. But your hands will shape the words they fear. You lower the paper. The words vanish in the smoke. You hide it in your satchel with the others. That night, you don't sleep. You listen to the creak of the rafters, the wind against the shutters, the sound of the raven shifting in its cage. And you whisper to yourself, they may forget your face, but the paper will remember your hands. The smell of death doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in quietly folded into the scent of spoiled pears on the windowsill, the vinegar bowl left out too long, the sweat-soaked linen that no one wants to wash. And when it comes from upstairs, from the upper room where Nostradamus works late and sleeps little, you pretend not to notice, but you notice. He hasn't descended in 2 days. No scribbled lists. No whispered instructions through the floorboards. No requests for mandrake or mint. Just silence. Even the raven is quiet. You bring water to his door, knock once, wait, then leave it there. The next morning, the water is untouched. You knock. Harder. Still nothing. So you open the door. It's CREAKS. His room smells like ink and stale air. Scrolls are scattered across the desk, some half-written, others still wet. Candles burn down to puddles. An astrolabe lies askew beside a dish of burned fruit. He's lying on the bed, facing the wall. You step closer, his eyes open, barely. Looks at you, smiles faintly, still grinding. He rasps, you nod. He coughs, a soft, dry sound, then gestures toward the desk. There's one more. In the drawer. You open it. Inside, a slip of parchment, already sealed. Wax still warm. For the boy, when I am gone. You hesitate. He watches you, then closes his eyes. You do not open the letter yet. Instead, you kneel beside the cot. You reach for the cloth on the basin and dab it against his forehead. He doesn't flinch. Just murmurs something in Latin, you. Half understand something about light and breath. You sit with him through the night. He doesn't wake again. The next morning, the town bell rings, slowly, once for the old, twice for the wise. You light the candle in the window. By midday. They arrive. 3 men in dark robes. They don't speak to you. They take the body, bow once. Leave with him through the garden gate. You're alone now. No more lists. No more feathers. No. More ink stains on your fingers, only the silence they left behind. You sweep the workshop, wipe the shelves, close the lids of the jars. You touch each herb one last time. Mugwort, horehound, rue. Your fingers know the textures better than your tongue knows. Your own name. Then you sit. You open the letter. The ink is uneven, rushed, but legible. They will forget your hands. They will remember my words. I did not write them alone. You ground the truth. You boiled the silence. You gave the prophecy its bones. At the bottom, write what you remember, even if no one listens, especially then. You fold the letter. You do not cry. Instead, you pull out a sheet of parchment, dip your quill in the last of his ink, and begin to write. Not a prophecy, not a cure, just the names of herbs, the days they bloom, the way the air smells before a storm, the way a man sounds when he's fading. You write everything he taught you. You write until your fingers cramp and your ink runs dry. You hide the pages beneath the floorboard, beneath the mortar, behind the jars, wherever you can, because one day someone will walk into this room and think Nostradamus worked alone, and they'll be wrong, because in every bottle, every prediction, every prayer whispered through crushed lavender, there is the ghost of your breath. And that, you think, is enough. Story 9. The gravedigger who catalogued the catacombs, Paris, 1791. The world above is in chaos. Revolution simmers in every alley. Cobblestones echo with the chants of angry crowds. Bread costs more than a man's coat. Priests disappear. Monuments fall. But down here, beneath the cobbled streets and broken statues, there is only stone. And you are the one who moves the dead. You are not a priest, not a philosopher, not a revolutionary. You are a gravedigger with bad knees and a headlamp that burns whale oil. You wear gloves made from butcher's hide. Your boots are always wet. Your fingers always smell faintly of lime. You work in the catacombs. It started with overflow. The cemeteries had run out of room. The Saints' Innocents ossuary collapsed during a spring rain. Rot leaked into basements. Families demanded answers. Doctors warned of miasma. The dead had to be moved. So they called for the diggers. And you answered. You descend every day with a cart, 2 ropes, and a book of names. Not your names. Their names. The ones who were buried long ago, stacked in mass. Graves buried under churches, forgotten beneath the cobbled squares. You carry them out, bone by bone. By the time they reach you, the names are long gone. The graves have collapsed. The coffins are splintered. You can tell only by the soil how long they've rested. Black clay means a child. Orange dust means bones gnawed by rats. White silt means old. Old dead before the plague years. You catalog them. Not officially. There are no ledgers for bones. In your head, you keep the count. A stack of femurs tall enough to reach the nave of Notre Dame. A pyramid of skulls taller than a priest. You are careful. You wash the bones in vinegar and lime water. You dry them with rough cloth. You stack them. Precisely skull, 2 femurs, tibia across the top. You learned the pattern from a monk who worked beside you once. He wept as he stacked. You never asked why the tunnels are narrow. Sometimes they collapse. Sometimes the lamps sputter. Once, you found yourself in a dead end with a cart full of ribs and no exit. You sat in the dark, ate half a carrot, waited until the rats stopped moving. Then found your way back. No one praised you. No one asked. You work with 2 others, Jacques, who rarely speaks, and Lemoyne, who jokes constantly to keep the silence from swallowing him. But today, you work alone. There was a collapse near the Saint Michel shaft. Jacques is injured. Lemoyne is up top. You bring the bones down yourself. 4 trips, each one heavier than the last. You whistle, not because you're happy, but because the sound helps you measure the space. If the echo shortens, you know a wall is too close. If it vanishes, you've entered the old quarry tunnels. Dangerous. You stop at your station. A low chamber with arched ceilings. You light the wall torch. The flicker reveals the familiar stacks rows of skulls staring blankly, tibias like picket fences, ribs piled like dry leaves. You begin unloading the cart, sorting by size, by wear, by fracture. Some skulls bear marks, bullet holes, blade chips. Others are smooth as marble. You place the first skull on the shelf. Then the next, then the next. Each one silent, still, waiting. You pause only once when you find a jawbone still attached. Unusual. You lift it gently. Feel the teeth. One is gold. Inlaid. A rich man. You turn it in your hands. Wonder who he was, what he did. If he ran when the mobs came, or if he welcomed them with wine, you'll never know. You set him beside the rest. At the end of your shift, you wash your hands in a cistern, fed by the city's forgotten aqueduct. The water is cold, smells faintly of limestone. You sit on the stone bench by the lamp and breathe. The bones do not frighten you. The silence does not weigh heavy anymore. Only the thought that every skull you place was once someone who thought they'd be remembered. And now, they are stacked neatly beside strangers, labeled only by the hands that touched them last. You return the next morning with stiff knees and a sore shoulder. The cart creaks behind you, its wheels packed with straw to cushion the bones. The sky is gray. The bakery didn't open. Somewhere in the city, they're guillotining someone again. You hear the echo of it before you reach the shaft. One quick thud. Then the silence of a crowd used to the sound. But down here, beneath it all no heads roll anymore. They've already rolled. You lower the cart by pulley and descend the spiral stairs into the belly of Paris. The tunnels greet you with their usual breath, damp, bitter, and ancient. A cool wind drifts down from an unseen crack. Somewhere far away, dripping water ticks like a second heartbeat. You light your torch. The oil hisses. Then you begin the work again. Today, the bones are from Saint-Jacques-Boucherie, old parish near the butcher's quarter. The cemetery was too full. Graves layered 3 deep. You remember the place from your own childhood, when the smell of meat and incense mixed on feast days. It smells like rot. The bones are different, heavier, thick from hard labor. You can feel it in the wrists. You've lifted 1,000 skeletons enough. to know who carried baskets and who carried books. These men had hands like your father's. You sort, quietly, ribs, skull, arm, leg, spine. You no longer wonder where their names went. You know, they were eaten by rain and time, eroded by preachers who stopped visiting, lost in the shift of politics, buried by noise. There's no blessing for these bones. No incense. No chant. Just you. A man with cracked boots and a vinegar rag. Still, you place them with care. You shape the stacks like walls bones as bricks. You line the eye sockets forward so they do not turn to dust unseen. You leave small stones between rows to steady the towers in case of tremor. You are building a cathedral no one visits, but you build anyway. At midday, Lemoyne joins you. He carries cheese in one hand and a skull in the other. He holds both with the same reverence. You ever wonder if one of these was a king? He asks. You shrug. Or a poet, a priest. He continues. You shake your head. Probably just another bastard, he says, grinning. He bites the cheese. You return to stacking. He hums as he works. Some old song. You've heard it before, on the days the air hangs too heavy and the torchlight feels too yellow. He sings for the dead, or to drown them out. After an hour, he stops, holds up a skull. There's something carved into the side, not a break, not a scratch. Letters. Faint, slanted, etched with something, small and sharp. You both lean closer. Luke, the rest too faded to read. A name? A warning? A joke? You turn the skull in your hands. It feels no different. The same hollow weight, the same smooth dome. But now it watches you harder. You don't place it in the wall. Instead, you put it on a separate shelf. Lemoyne doesn't ask why. He knows better. He keeps humming. Later that day, a new cart arrives, delivered by a man you don't know. Younger, nervous. He says it's from the convent of St. Catherine. Not blessed, he says quickly. No time. Just move them, please. He walks away before you can reply. You uncover the cart. Children. Small bones. So light they feel like ash in your hands. Tiny ribs. Skulls the size of melons. Some missing jaws. Some not yet fully fused. Pause. You don't hum. You don't stack right away. You sit with them for a moment, and you begin, but differently. You do not build a wall. You build a cradle. You line the floor with straw. You lay each small skull facing inward, as if curled in sleep. You stack the bones gently, with moss between to stop the rattle. You place a single candle in the corner. Lemoyne watches, says nothing. When the work is done, you back away slowly. You do not speak the name you do not know, but you think it. And in this place, that is enough. The lantern burns low. You sit beside it with your hands in your lap, fingers still dusted in bone powder. Your knees creak when you shift. The air is still. Behind you, the wall breathes. Not with sound, but with weight. You've stacked over 40 skulls today. More ribs than you can count. Femurs like fence posts. Spines like ladders that lead nowhere. And still, the cart at the tunnel. Mouth waits with more. You don't move. You just listen. The catacombs hum differently at night. When the carts stop, when the shovels rest, when even Lemoyne goes home to his wine and his broken-backed chair. Down here, the silence doesn't feel empty. It feels like watching. As if every socket in every skull has memorized the shape of your face. You reach into your satchel. Pull out a scrap of cloth, once part of your mother's apron. You use it to wipe the sweat from your forehead. She died 5 winters ago. You didn't tell the others when you laid her in the wall. Just a quiet touch of fingers to bone. Now she's part of it. And maybe that's why you stay. You used to think it was just the work. Just the routine, the method, the rhythm of sorting and stacking hauling and scraping. But it's more than that. Now, these bones know you. And you know them. There's one skull in particular. You placed it 5 years ago, near the old quarry gate. It had a crack across the top, like a dry riverbed. No teeth. You still remember how it felt in your hands, how the sockets seemed to follow you when you left. Sometimes you pass it and nod just to let it know. You remember no one else remembers. Anything anymore above ground. The revolution burns hotter each day. Streets flood with rhetoric and muskets. Names are added to death lists like market orders. Families vanish. Statues fall. Kings are replaced with slogans. But down here, no politics survive, just people. People stripped of their silk, their shame, their status, all reduced to calcium and dust. You've placed a bishop next to a beggar, a soldier next to a shoemaker, a girl beside a revolutionary who died too soon to change anything. And the bones do not complain. They lie still. Equal. You rise. Stretch your back. There's one more wall to finish before sunrise. You push the cart closer. As you stack, you murmur softly, not prayers, not poems, just words. Here you are. There you go. You'll rest now. Sometimes you imagine they answer, not with voices, but with silence that changes shape, with tunnels that warm slightly when you walk past, with walls that remember. When the last skull is set, you take the chalk from your pouch. You draw a single line on the arch above the wall. Not a name, not a date, just a mark. Your mark, one that only you will recognize. One that says, I was here. I remembered you. You gather your tools, douse the flame. And as you walk back toward the staircase up, toward the noise and forgetfulness of the waking city, you whisper into the dark, good night. The bones do not answer, but something lingers behind you in the air. Not breath, not fear, but something close to. Acknowledgement. And for a man with no plaque, no song, no name carved in stone, that is more than enough. Story 10. The imperial clerk who knew too much. Beijing, 1732. It is spring in the Forbidden City, but you cannot feel it from your desk. The plum blossoms bloom beyond the red walls, and the eunuchs joke near the koi pond. But here, inside the records pavilion, it is always winter. Cold, quiet, unchanging. You are the third-ranking assistant, scribe in the Ministry of Rights. No one knows your name. You wear gray robes with frayed cuffs. Your slippers are patched with silk that doesn't match. Your ink-stained fingers have outlived 3 emperors. You speak rarely, eat little, sleep only when your eyes can no longer read the brushstrokes. But your memory is perfect. You are the one who copies the letters. The ones not meant for public record. The petitions, the secrets, the unofficial memoranda that pass from hand to hand like smoke. You do not write them. You do not seal them. You only copy them exactly as written, without judgment, without correction. And in doing so, you know everything. You know which concubines have sons pretending not to be, which generals are buying salt illegally from the eye, Mongols, which governor in Yunnan is faking locust reports to pocket disaster relief. You know who visits the empress, dowager after curfew. You know who forged the death certificate of a still living prince. You know far too much for a man with no rank, but no one suspects you, because you shuffle, because you blink often, because you stammer slightly when spoken. 2, because you always bow too low, too long, with your eyes firmly fixed on the ground. They think you are meek. They do not realize you are dangerous. You didn't plan to become this. You arrived 20 years ago, a pale-faced teenager with a decent stroke and no family name worth bribing. You were hired because you could write quickly and didn't faint at the sight of blood-stained petitions. You stayed because you never made mistakes. Your work is always precise, always neutral, always perfect. It must be. Because one wrong mark can mean death. A miscopied character can turn grain shipment delayed into grain shipment destroyed. A forgotten punctuation dot can make an apology into a rebellion. And yet, you've never once aired dot, not once, because your life depends on it. Your office is small. A wooden desk, a water basin, 3 ink stones ranked by depth of blackness, 1 stack of plain paper, 1 of silk parchment for imperial correspondence, a box of rejected brushes, a small brass mirror you do not use. Your supervisor, Master Lu, nods when he enters. He never asks questions. He sets the folder down. Red ribbon. Urgent.u. Unfold it carefully. Today's task is a letter from the Minister of War. To the Emperor. Topic: Northern Garrison's troop losses and missing silver. You begin to copy. Each stroke exact, each line clean. You copy not just the words, but the rhythm, the implied tone of respect laced with barely hidden anxiety. You know when the brush should tremble, when it should hesitate, when it should press hard. You know because you've seen it all before. Finish after 2 hours. Blot the ink. Dust the page. Slide it into a new folder. Tie it with gold thread. And then, without thinking, you reach for your secret scroll. It's hidden beneath the drawer panel. A long sheet of rice paper. On it, a list. Not of names. Not of crimes. Just a series of connections. Lines. Dots. Titles. You do not write the facts, only the echoes. Between them, the minister who wrote this letter has ties to a merchant in Hanzhou. That merchant paid for a funeral that didn't happen. That funeral coincided with a fire at a garrison. That garrison lost silver. You connect the dots, not to expose, just to remember. You do not report it. You do not threaten. You do not whisper. You only write, because knowledge is lighter than gold, but more dangerous than poison. The problem begins with a slip of silk. Not yours. Yours are always clean, folded, inkless by the time they reach the next hand. But this one smells like camphor, fresh from a sleeve, not the record. Vault. It arrives with no ribbon. No seal, just a single folded square placed quietly beside your inkstone. While you are washing your brushes at the corner basin, you look around. No, one is there. You wait. You finish drying your hands. You trim the tips of your best brush. Then you unfold the silk. 1 sentence. 6 characters. Do you know who is watching? Your spine tightens. You glance up. The room looks the same. Same dusted scrolls. Same cracked wooden beams. Same faint smell of lacquer and ink. But now everything feels off. You burn the silk. Very slowly, strip by strip, into your waste bowl. You stir the ashes into the basin, and you do not answer the question, because of course you know who is watching. Everyone. And no one. That is the rule of the floor pavilion. But still you take your secret scroll that night and place it under a loose stone tile behind the calligraphy hall. You will not retrieve it for 2 weeks. You must be careful now. Too many names. Too many lines. Too much truth. The next morning, you're summoned to the office of personnel. It's rare. You've only been once before 15 years ago, when they almost transferred you to the Bureau of Astronomy. That time, the paperwork was lost. Somehow, you enter quietly. A young magistrate is waiting. Clean robes, gold hairpin. Too young for the crease already forming at his brow. He smiles. Then hands you a folder. You've been selected for temporary reassignment, he says. The palace archive requires skilled transcription. You nod. I am honored. You reply. You are not honored that you are wary. The archive is not part of your usual jurisdiction. It is where imperial edicts go to die, where every whisper becomes paper. Where paper disappears, you bow again. You are dismissed. At afternoon, you arrive at the archive. The stone steps are dusted with rose petals from a recent wedding won. That cost 3 provinces a month of grain. Inside, the scent of incense and mildew clash. Your new desk is larger. Your ink darker, but the room is emptier. Only one other man is here. He sits in the far corner, facing the wall. You never hear him walk, never hear him breathe. But he is always there, watching. You cannot tell. You are given a new task. You are to copy the confession. Scrolls. Not for the records. Not for trial. For clarity. The first is long, over 50 lines. A nobleman accused of sending coded letters to the Manchu loyalists. His writing is erratic. The strokes tremble. The lines blur. He says he is innocent. You copy it anyway. At the bottom. You leave space for a verdict. It is not your place to decide. But you wonder. You finish. 5 more that day. All the same. Men with titles. Men with reasons. Men with secrets too loud to keep. By dusk, your hand aches. You walk home slowly. Past the lotus pond. Past the eunuchs gossiping over candied plums. Past the silk screen that hides the guards who are never officially there. You reach your chamber. You close the door, and you begin to write. Not with ink. With memory. You map every name, every punishment hinted, every truth whispered beneath a lie. Draw no conclusions, but you see a shape forming, a shadow with fingers, and every finger points upward. At dinner. You do not eat. You listen to the bamboo creak. You wonder if you'll be summoned again. And then someone knocks. Just once. You freeze. But when you open the door, no one is there. Only a folded piece of paper, plain, rough. Inside, you are not invisible. No signature. No mark. No threat. Just those 4 words, heavy enough to crush a mountain. You do not burn this one. You do not hide it. You leave it on your desk. So that if someone comes, they will know that you already know. And that knowing is your only weapon. The 3rd scroll you copy on the morning of your disappearance is the shortest. Just 8 lines. A confession, signed with a trembling seal. A governor admits to ordering the execution of a rival without imperial consent. He begs forgiveness, offers half his fortune, cites years of loyal service, mentions a daughter in a convent. At the bottom, written in an unfamiliar hand. His daughter was removed last night. Do not preserve this record. You copy it anyway. Precisely. Twice. 1 for the archive. 1 for you. You no longer believe in safety, but you do believe in paper. Ink doesn't tremble. Parchment doesn't forget, even when men do. That night, you return to your true ledger, the one under the stone tile behind the calligraphy hall. It has grown long, 36 scrolls, folded with care, every name cross-referenced, every pattern followed, your brushwork more elegant than ever. You tie the scrolls in red thread. You place them in a lacquered box you carved from a tea chest. The scent of old leaves still clings to it, faint, familiar. You bury it under the willow tree by the wall. Not too deep. Not too obvious. Just enough that only someone who knows how to search will find it. You return to your quarters. Wash your brushes. Last time, you do not pack. You take nothing, because a man with secrets cannot carry bags. At dawn, they come for you. 2 silent guards in white. No insignia. They don't cuff you. They don't speak. They walk you through the eastern corridor, past the marble lions, past the morning sweepers who do not look up, past the reflecting pool, where the emperor's face once appeared in water and rumor. They bring you to a pavilion with no name. There, a table, a single sheet of paper, A blank confession. You are expected to fill it in. You pick up the brush. Dip. It slowly begin to write, but not the words they want. Instead, you write, I knew too much, and said nothing. I saw the machine turn, and I became a gear. I was quiet. I was exact. I was necessary. And now I am obsolete. You sign it with your full name, the one no one ever used. You place the brush down. They do not nod. They do not touch you. They simply step aside. You walk out of the pavilion. Alone. That night. Your room is empty. The inkstones removed. The scrolls burned. Your desk reassigned. Your name is never spoken again. And still, years later, a boy copying Imperial Harvest reports in the Ministry of Rights finds a strip of paper beneath a loose drawer panel. It is just a name, surrounded by dots. A single line connecting one chancellor to a wedding, to a fire. The boy does not understand it, but he saves it anyway and buries it beneath the willow tree when no one is watching, because somehow he knows. History is not written by those who rule. It is written by those who copy. Quietly, faithfully, completely, until the ink becomes truth. That concludes our final story. The imperial clerk who knew too much, and with it, your quiet descent into forgotten history. As the parchment curls and the candles fade, let your mind wander gently to gravediggers in tunnels, queens wrapped in lace, to children who boiled rosewater, and scribes who knew what not to say. History doesn't shout. It whispers. And tonight, it whispered just for you. Good night.